Hi, everybody. It's oh gosh, it's episode 19. Yeah, no, season 2, episode 19 of Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group CIC. And today, once again, Gary's not with us. Don't know what's got into the lad. It's nothing to do with his contract, I can tell you that. He is meant to be here, but he's not. We will give you an update hopefully next week. Meanwhile, as you will have already noticed, I am joined, yes, I am, by the head honcho, no less, of the Nighttime Industry Association. And Mike's here to give us, well, some good news, I hope. Well, it's good news as far as I'm concerned, and hopefully for the rest of the industry as well. Mike, let somebody know who you are in case nobody's heard of you, although I can't believe that's the case.
Well, yeah, my name's Mike Kill. Terrible second name, grey rugby shirt. But the reality is I run a trade association that looks after about 10,000 individual businesses across the nighttime economy. That full sort of ecosystem: security, pubs, clubs, bars, theatres, etc. And my primary role, realistically, is to advocate for the industry. So to work both locally and nationally to ensure that we get the best deal in policy, legislation, etc. And I've got, worked very hard during the pandemic and outside of that to make sure that we've got a voice and a seat at the table in the different departments. And we've had some great wins and we've had some huge challenges. So for me, and recently, as I was speaking to Ian earlier, we've had a fantastic win today, where we've delivered the first sort of workshop or webinar to police licensing officers on the industry. The first time really the industry has had a platform to talk directly to licensing officers about the perspective of operators, something that we've advocated for some time. And the Assistant Chief Constable for the Midlands, who heads up alcohol and licensing on the National Police Commissioners Council, agreed for us to do this, and we've delivered the first one this morning, a 45-minute session. I think we had about 70 or 80 licensing officers on as part of PALO, which is the academy. So I'm almost after a year of lobbying and pushing to see if we can actually get in front of licensing officers to teach them about industry and the culture that we exist in from a industry perspective. I kind of feel almost like we've made a huge step forward, and feel very positive that we've been able to do it, and the feedback's been very strong. So yeah, it was great to be part of it. It's taken a lot of planning, but as you can appreciate with all these things, those big moves start with small steps, and I think this morning was a small, although considered, step to changing approaches and changing attitudes and having a greater understanding of our industry from a licensing police officer coming into our environments.
I think that's really interesting, Mike, and it's fantastic that that ability to communicate across your different partnerships is really vital. I remember the first conference E1 in London, and I remember, I think it was Dr. Shane Shapiro, talking about the need for the industry to speak the language of the civil servants, the police, etc., and also to potentially start working to show them to get involved in that. So, I mean, is it really that long? Has it taken that long to start that process going?
It has. I think it's a little bit of, look, I mean, one of the slides that we did this morning was about partnership, but conditional partnership, and also having challenging conversations and trust. All right. And we've got to have an honest conversation. I mean, not all licensees are easy to work with. Not all police officers are easy to work with. But what we've got to do is get to some consistency and recognize that, conditional partnership is not a positive relationship. In other words, we have a, we're happy to work with you up until the point that we don't get what we want, and then we'll decide to make it conditional, is where the issue lies. And I presented that in a way this morning that people understood that it's about personalities on the ground and approach. And this is about building trust. So trust is a real challenge at the moment within the sector, and having challenging conversations should be constructive on both sides. This is not, I'm not getting what I want, so I'm going to enforce. This should be strategically, I'm going to work with you to the point that we get a solution that's workable all round. And if there isn't a solution that's workable all round, then we're going to have to sort of step away, and possibly the same way door staff do it when there's a point of conflict, and that point of conflict is directed at one person. You remove that point of conflict, someone else steps in, and then they've got no one to target. And sometimes that's the way to do it. And we've got to consider different approaches here. But without a doubt, we managed to get the points across that, conditional partnership is not healthy. Challenging conversations are going to happen, like the Brixton Academy, and we brought that up. There are things that they're not going to like. There are things that we're not going to like. But everything has to be built on trust. And the conversations need to be around, I want to get to a point that if someone has messed up, if a member of security has messed up, or a licensing officer has messed up, they say, I've made a mistake, I will correct it, or I'll do this, or an operator is able to do that. At the moment, we're not in that zone. And, we go back to everyone being proactive in terms of drug fines. And then when you go for an extension of license hours, then those drug fines as a proactive response to a drug issue then gets thrown up in front of you as a drug issue. So for us, these are the bits that I brought up this morning for the first time in front of, almost 100 licensing officers, saying, look, you've got to consider your approach. You can't just enforce. And we used Cure as an example in New York, where they've taken the approach from March, which was their previous enforcement approach, and moved towards Cure, which is about a solution which is encompassed by everyone being involved. So that's how we're sort of the mantra that we're moving forward. But it gives you an example of some of those discussions, and that conversation has never happened in open forum amongst licensing officers, where they're able to Q&A me on how I feel or what my perspective is in terms of licensing. But there were some really constructive conversations and Q&A that I think were really positive. And, if it changes, 50% of those people on the call this morning have a greater consideration to their approach, then that's the start of the change.
I think, you're quite right. Obviously, I know I don't do anything, because Gary often tells me, and he's quite right, actually. But the bottom line is I'm well aware of situations around the country where venues that have gone out of their way to take proactive measures to keep people safe, then find that those measures, as you quite rightly say, are used against them in licensing hearings, etc. That is not the way, and the issue that you said about when you're dealing with guest safety officers, the need to switch, the point of contact, to deflect, distract, etc. What's going on? It's absolutely critical that we can work together to make sure that the main object that we all want is public safety. And banging people over the head like whack-a-mole every single time is not the way to do it, because not every venue is the same, is it, Mike?
No, and I think, look, there are bad operators, there are bad licensing officers. There's no two. There are bad security people, or guest safety officers as such. So I think the issue is to recognise that. I think, there's a lot of work in terms of looking at things like frameworks around decision making for licenses to gain consistency. Yeah. We talked about the HSE model and the way that looks. We talked about the inconsistency in terms of data. The fact that we need to embellish a greater field of data that takes into account economics, culture, community, and equality impact, or so that we really do consider a greater field outside of crime. And we also need to consider the statistical position. And I'll give you an example. The aquarium in London went through a hell of a time where they looked at the statistics of crime in terms of the amount of people walking through the doors. And when you looked at it proportionately against the Met figures and the types of crimes that the Met figures were related to where the aquarium was, the aquarium were doing a hell of a lot better job of keeping crime out than the Met were doing of keeping crime homed or under wraps within, you know, the whole of London. So, and I appreciate that we're talking about different resource levels, but the reality is, you know, their job is to minimize crowd, antisocial behavior, noise, etc. So there are things like that that need to be addressed. But we did talk about the economics. We did talk about,
Yeah.
you know, the differences between consumer requirement and social responsibility. So there were some really nice pieces and really explaining to them that things like Gen Alpha these days are always looking for things like provenance, sustainability, carbon footprint. You know, they really sort of refine and look at what's going on. Talked about things like vertical drinking becoming a thing of the past. 25% people going over to no and low alcohol. People having a more premiumized palate. So they will brand call rather than go for house spirits because they know the taste and what they want. And they tend to have longer drinks. And where the dwell time is shortened because people are going out later, you know, it's culminating in a position where alcoholism at night is probably not as prevalent as we're suggesting. I think we probably have more issues with people home drinking and in some of those different societal environments, which is where the challenge is. So there's some of the issues that we've sort of faced and got rid of those misconceptions that are just easily led in the media.
Just before we move on to the next subject, I just want to ask you about the HSE. You mentioned the HSE model, but that it's very compliance led, isn't it? Because
it is. And I mean, I'm not saying it's a perfect model, but what we're saying is where you can put an application in not Glasgow, in Newcastle, and get another one in Brighton, same application, everything the same, and get two different outcomes. We need to start looking at consistency. And when you look at HSE and the way that they work the model in terms of exposure and risk, you know, are we sort of, you know, making this harder than is necessary? And actually to create some sort of framework on the decision making which has other ancillary bits that would feed into it, including data, etc., then we can start to actually get some consistency. And that's what we're looking for. And like you say, in no means is it completely, you know, perfect. And we're going to have to think broader about this because it's not as straightforward. But we've got to start with some framework and we've got to look at what's around us, what's usable, what's potentially something that can be adopted, albeit having other influences that will help the decision maker. But the problem is at the moment, there's a lot of these decisions that are subjective and they're born from misinformation. And that's where the challenge lies. If you've got a framework, then it's harder for it to be a subjective position or misinformed. It's then based on a framework for decision making. And yes, I understand compliance, but yes, in the same respect, if that means that, you know, we're going to get greater accuracy in decision making, then I think we've got to bite the bullet and really consider it. At least we can build to that framework.
I think you're right there. I mean, it's getting the accuracy and consistency of the decision making. It's but the other thing there that was crucial. I mean, by the way, folks, me and Mike we both got coughs. So if you see us as though we're about looking thing, we could cough at any minute. Yeah, so don't worry about it. We're okay. Yeah, we're going to bravely carry on. But what I was thinking, I forgot what I was going to say. There you go. That's why I shouldn't have stopped. But we're talking about accuracy of decision making there. But the other thing that brings in the HSE and its subjectivity in terms of the possibility of its interpretation brings into you may be more cautious, more risk averse than I. So you, as a licensing officer in, you know, what do you call it, in Newcastle, may have a completely different approach to one in, I don't know, Western-super-Mare.
Yeah, of course. I mean, listen, there are all of these tangible things to work through. But sorry, there are all of these tangible things to work through. But I mean, we've got to start. We've got to start at a point which is a considered position. And what do we have out there that looks at a framework for decision making? HSE is one of them. There may be a few others, but that is the more prominent one that's possibly adaptable. And that's something we've got to really have a look at. Hello, Gary.
All right, sorry, I got my timings wrong.
Oh, yeah, really? We didn't
Really?
notice for the last half an hour. When me and Mike are sick, and we were looking for you to lead the way and cover it up, we were to cough our way through like Bob from the Fast Show. But anyway, we've just finished probably one of the most riveting and most interesting conversations I've had, and you weren't here. So, folks, has been a bonus in that respect. But we're going to shift on now, Mike, because I'm aware of the time, and the fact that you've got to press your suit ready for tomorrow. So the HMRC, what is all of this about?
So last year we were approached by HMRC with some very clear questions around the security industry and the disparity in taxation, particularly around fraudulent workers, I suppose is the way to look at it. So what they were saying is there is a load of work that's been done with things like Uber drivers, and now what they're looking at is focus on the security sector. We'd already highlighted very clearly that there are issues with cash payments, door companies trying to steal door supervisors from doors live on nights, paying cash, self-employed, etc. And HMRC have put a load of work in alongside the SIA, DWP and others to look at the approach. They've investigated Southern Islands position, they've looked at Australia, and what they've realised or been very clear on is that as far as they're concerned, that all security should be PAYE. That's their view. And we intercepted this at a point where they were looking to move forward and do something quite structured in terms of enforcement. And our view was, if you go out and enforce now, we're going to lose a big part of the sector, which will impact not only nighttime economy, but it'll also impact the security sector as a whole. So what we worked with HMRC and DWP now, and also included now the NPCC, is to have a very clear message that there was somewhat of a hiatus in terms of time to get their house in order. And initially, it sort of happened towards the end of last year, and we were looking at the 1st of July as that 6-month sort of period in terms of hiatus. And the government doesn't work that quickly, and to get through committees in terms of having an overt ad that goes out, which clearly highlights from HMRC that you've got until the 1st of July to get your house in order, was not something that we could get signed off as quickly. So what we did is we did a load of work with HMRC in terms of the exposure, and also how many people would become compliant and what was remaining in terms of non-compliance, so that they could also work out what resource they would require to tidy up the industry as a whole and push everyone over to PAYE. So this is the culmination of this work. Now, the committees are still looking to sit, which is about the ministers evaluating exactly what an overt tax compliance notice will look like. But in the meantime, we've been working with a lot of the big corporates, letting them know that very clearly that HMRC are scrutinizing the way that they do business with security resource supply. All right. So what's happening at the moment is we've worked with the UK DSA and the security suppliers from that group and others. And then we also worked with the NTIA in terms of the group of operators to inform them that HMRC will be coming down on them, and they will be looking to review the way that you operate with security firms. And the way it's being set up is very clear. There is something called the Agencies Act, which means that if you do not do your due diligence for security supply, then the culpability could sit with the resource supply and the end user. So what this meeting is on the 23rd at 1 p.m. till 230 is the culmination of that work, the first of a multitude of different communications, which we're gathering as many of the security and operators together so they can all hear from HMRC and the Department of Work and Pensions and the SIA and the National Police Council Commission. We've got Scott Green coming to it, who's Assistant Commissioner for Alcohol and Licensing for the police. And, you know, for us, this is a real benchmark position to let the industry know things are changing, and they're getting a heads up early doors, because what HMRC wanted to do was go after people. So we bought time for people to get their house in order. Now, there are a lot of questions around it. There is going to be some very clear understanding in terms of what they perceive as fraud. They're already tracking networks which look at about 150 plus security supply resource companies that are doing this fraudulently, cash payments, etc. So these things are really starting to get intricate, and the intelligence is very, very strong. So what is going to happen moving forward is this meeting is going to happen. Once the committee agree that they can do an over tax compliance notice, they are then going to communicate to all the security companies across the UK, which they've got the database for now, to let them know that they need to get their house in order. At the same time, the SIA and DWP are going to do a database scrape, which is going to look at the individual operator and universal credit, SIC, etc. And they're going to make comparators between the two so that they can understand if people are working or getting cash payment or etc. So that's definitely going to happen as well, similar to the way that it happened in Southern Ireland. And then over and above that, the NPCC is going to work from a licensing perspective so that the licensing officers are fully aware that most of these security suppliers need to be part of a PAYE system, not a self-employed system. And there is a level of culpability. So the way that it's been set up is there is a hiatus for people to get their house in order. The committee is still working forward. This meeting is going to take account of HMRC's position and exactly what the due diligence expected of people, companies and resource supply. The DWP and the SIA are also going to be on to give very clear understanding of the progression of this, and the NPCC is going to be there to highlight the licensing implications moving forward. The reason we've done it like that is so people on one call can get a complete view of what's moving forward. This is a fundamental change. It's going to be huge in terms of creating tax parity for everybody, but in the same respects, it's going to be an industry changing movement. And it's going to take the course of several years for it to get into play. But the reality is it's going to be for the better good long term. There are issues, we know that. We're also working with DWP and others to look at how we can enhance people moving into the security industry, because we also recognize that there is going to be a shortcoming with people stepping away and people stepping in, and also the quality of security that are out there. So that, I hope, gives you a bit of an encompassed position, and I'm happy to accept questions.
Oh, that's very, very good. We'll let Gary ask the first question, being as he's, you know, cause otherwise he'll feel as though he's done nothing. Carry on, Gary.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate that. So we're looking at every security officer or every security company has now got to be on PAYE.
Yeah.
And obviously they want to get rid of this self-employment thing. What about the people out on the ground? They can turn around and say, you know, I still want to be self-employed because they're working for A, B, and C company. Would they have to become a limited company themselves and then pay themselves PAYE?
No, I mean, they will go into this resource provider. So I can't remember the phrase that they use. Is they've got these almost employment providers that sit in between. So you sort of buy into it, and then people pay through PAYE that way. But it's only charged through invoice through those I can't remember, sorry, names and things like that for me. But I think they are going to deal with that as an issue. So they are going to be very, very clear on all the key components. I mean, recently I've had a load of festival people come back to me and go, well, there's no way that people are not going to be self-employed. And I said, well, look, the reality is the compliance position is for people to be PAYE in terms of HMRC. There's no two ways about it. So you can argue till the cows come home, but it's coming. So you can run it right the way up until that point. And if you get caught out, you get caught out. But there are, yeah, as I say, I mean, it's, I tell you what it's like. I think they're called payroll companies. And the way that they do it is the payroll companies are the conduit between PAYE and invoicing. And they're also talking about that. They're also talked about if someone turns around and writes a disclaimer to say that they are accountable for their own tax, that also doesn't stand up either. As far as they're concerned, the culpability will still sit with the resource supply or the end user operator. So what you've got realistically is the end user operator and the resource supplier being culpable for someone fraudulently being paid or fraudulently not declaring their tax, because, and it has to be based on the level of due diligence. So that's where the challenge lies.
I see. But so going back to that position, I fully understand that. I appreciate that. Just looking at the payroll company thing at the moment, I've worked with a number of payroll companies over the years, and some of them can be very bizarre and out the window. And as you said, there could be a conduit between the two things. But just still going back, so let's look at myself for a minute. So I work for a number of companies, so I have to do that as a self-employed basis. So here I am. I'm working for Vanessa's company. I also work for other people out there, etc. So I put my invoices in. Now, on that point, I'm still going to have to put my invoices in, or they're going to say no, because we're a security company now. You've got to go on PAYE. Now, I'm going to be paying more tax at that point, aren't I? So will I be getting a rebate back on that?
I can't, Gary. I can't answer that question. That's you know, if I was a tax officer, mate, I'd love to sit here and tell you that you're going to get £100,000 back. But you know, the reality is there are going to be intricacies which need to be challenged, and this is why we have to put this meeting in place, because HMRC, you know, between Colin and Liam, who are leads on it, they will be the experts and they'll be very clear in terms of their position. We also have to recognise that DWP also look after HSE. So from a DWP perspective, HSE will also consider the risk element and also the insurances, which are not covered by many of these security operators. So there is a wider, broader perspective on this that needs to be considered. I know there are good operators out there, and this is not about driving ACS in any way, shape or form. It's about tax compliance, and it's about creating tax parity amongst the sector. Because as you know, if you're operating well and you're operating under PAYE and everyone else is operating self-employed, the flexibility or the fluidity of rates is a lot greater outside of that sort of core of people that are doing PAYE. So what they're looking at doing is creating that tax parity across the industry. So, you know, for me, there are going to be individual cases that I think are going to be questioned. There are going to be some test cases without a doubt. And I would probably suggest that you'll be one of them because of the setup and the way you are. But that's a question that can be answered on the 23rd if you come along.
Oh, well, I've already got the dates in my diary there, Mike, because you said them to me. So
I'll have a word with it. I'll have a word with the tax people and make sure he is one of the first ones done. And then we can have the tax people on and explain why Gary is in jail. But that's by the by. He's not really going to be in jail. Don't worry, people. I'm only joking. The thing that strikes me here, and the big fear that I have, you see, is the DWP. The data scrape, and what you're talking about, that it's not business licensing by the back door. Let's be clear, it is, because
without a doubt, there is no look. When HMRC came to me and they said, look, we're going to be clamping down on what's going on in terms of the security industry, my first vision was, if you're going to do it now, you're going to scaremonger people and everyone's going to pack up and disappear. What I did say was, look, we need at least 6 to 12 months to get our house in order if we're going to do it. And we need a hiatus. We need almost an amnesty. They weren't willing to use the word amnesty for lots of reasons. I did push it. And I think, you know, we've got the best of the worst case scenario. I mean, DWP are going to look into people. There's no two ways about it. SIA, you know, want to clean up the industry. I don't think cleaning up the industry is a bad thing. I just think it's got to be considered, and we've got to combat this with a level of recruitment or driver that's going to drive people to the industry, because all we'll do is we'll just have a whitewash of people leave. And we also, you know, the reason for having these meetings that we put together is so that everyone can hear exactly what I'm hearing. I mean, the amount of people that I've spoken to go, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Well, let me tell you something, right? On the 23rd, you're going to hear from HMRC, the SAA, DWP, and the head of the Police Commissioners Council, who are all going to tell you that this is happening. So you can ignore it. You can tell me it's never going to happen. But the reality is it's already non-tax compliant in many environments. So they could go after everyone today. What I'm trying to say is, let's not let that happen. Let's build towards it. Let's get people's houses in order, and you know, let's work with them to get to a point where we're not going to lose people and compromise business or, you know, resource companies. And that's the mantra for us. And yes, there are going to be some people who benefit and some people who are going to lose out of it. But I think overall, the quality of operator out there that will be sustained will get rid of the organized crime gangs, will get rid of all of that sort of stuff, because people won't want to be in that position. And you know, that's the bit that we really need to clean up. And I think that's where the SIA and others are keen to sort of progress. Interestingly enough, when I spoke to Scott Green, he turned around to me and he said, well, you're brave. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, he said, you're going to do something that's going to change the industry for, you know, long time. I said, but it's going to have a resonating positive impact on, you know, how we progress and how we develop the industry as a whole in terms of professionalism. So, you know, how can I argue with that? Yes, it's not going to be easy. Yes, there are going to be people we're going to lose, but yes, we are going to gain some really, you know, strong position off the back of it in terms of professionalism. And what comes with that is the opportunity to lift rates and those sort of things, which we all talk about consistently. You know, the reality is if resource goes down, rates go up. And, you know, we've got to argue the toss, then it's worthwhile. You know, we all talk about £12.33 being a standard rate for Lidl or Aldi. And, you know, I was paying £11 for security and it's not gone up for years. And maybe this is the way to sort of drive things forward, because we're already seeing rates being increased by people who are adopting this already.
The thing that I just want to pick up on there, Gary, and then perhaps you can talk add to this, Gary, is that when you look at the SIA figures, yeah, it looks as though it looks, but oh my God, it's fantastic. But then when we talk about the number of licenses that are actually being used, there is a massive disparity in those licenses. And one of the biggest drivers for that are these DWP schemes, where we churn out sausage doorman, just sausage whatever, and you know, on the basis that we'll get them into employment. There is no real consideration for the genuine employment prospects of those individuals, be it in security or in any occupation. How, you know, are we going to, or do we need to show some leadership and say no more? If you're going to put people on a course for security or any other, because it's taxpayers' money, you know, it needs to have genuine benefit. Are we going to lead, Mike, on this? Are we leading?
So I think the key thing here is recognizing that the fact that we have a definite deficit in terms of continual professional development within the security sector. I also recognize that we have a real issue with the quality of people coming into the sector, and some of that is about, you know, the opportunity to earn. Some of it is about recognizing the type of people that we attract. Some of it is about recognizing that it's a secondary role or a secondary part-time job. So we've got to make it work. And I think those conversations are definitely being had. What I would say is I think that's a longer term position, but what we are trying to do is get to a point where we've got an effective way of tapping into resource that is going to fulfill that shortcoming, but without giving us a void, without giving us the London Olympics 2012 legacy of door staff, which don't really want to do it. They just picked it up because it was an opportunity. So I think the key here is, retention. Acquisition is key, but it's got to be the right acquisition. And I think the assessment part of this, whether it goes through DWP, whether it goes through the forces, fire brigade, or wherever it is, all has to be assessed relevant to the type of people coming in. There is no point in putting youngsters and kids on doors in the middle of the East End, the same way that, it's not worth doing it, putting them in the middle of Manchester. We've got to work hard to try and have a look at that. At the moment, the argument is, and I've seen a casino do this recently, they were paying something like £12 an hour. They then decided, right, I'm not going to pay £12 an hour. I'm going to pay £16 an hour. They put everyone's wages up. The retention went through the roof. The acquisition cost phenomenally less. And what they were paying in terms of going out and advertising was reduced massively because they weren't having to spend the money in terms of recruitment. And I think the challenge that we have is we are going to get to a point where resource is going to be a challenge. The rates are then going to be considered, and we're going to start to be able to build on a proposition that potentially we should have been in some years ago. But the reality is we've got to take a bite, or otherwise we're just going to be in this perpetual motion of tax disparity between self-employed. We needed to go one way or another. We either need to go completely self-employed, or we needed to go PAYE. HMRC have forced our hand on that, so there's no way out of that, I'm afraid.
I just think before I break, sorry Gary, and then I'll shut up for a change. The only thing I was going to say is Tesco's. I worked for Tesco's manager years and years ago, and when we were doing our training there, their retention rates, and that's what I'm going to talk about at this moment. Their recruitment costs were 130%. Turnover was phenomenal. When they got that down and brought it down, that enabled them to build 3 new superstores a year. And thereby generate greater market share, and that was obviously raising wages, raising opportunities, etc.
Greater development potential as well. Greater development potential. So what we're talking about is with the CPD, if you're retaining people, you can invest more in there. There's more confidence in them being part of a wider industry and a growing industry. But we need to bite the bullet at some point, because at the moment the industry is in chaos. Let's be honest about it. It's all over the shop. Gary,
talking of chaos, someone who can tell the time. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, one of the things we want to flow back onto, I mean, it's all very well, it's all great for the big corporate companies. I mean, let's look at the small independents who are going to be out there. They need door staff and bits and pieces. And as you know, that they're struggling as it is. And now the security companies, who they're going to go back and go, well, we've got to now pay this, we've got to do this, and we now need this price increase. Now, these small independent clubs, bars, and what have you, how's that going to affect them in this stage? Because they've got to now find more money. They're suffering from the VAT. They're suffering from their rates and bits and pieces. And you've been the chairman of the nighttime industry. I mean, how's it going to reflect on these people out there who need that?
I think the reality is this. This is not something that I've made a decision to push. It's something I've made a decision to manage as best or appropriately as possible in terms of the timeline. So when you talk about this as an impact, this is not something that I'm sat here going, I'm advocating for this. I recognize that there needs to be some changes, without a doubt, because we can't continue with what we're doing. I've tried to get to a point where it's going to have the least impact on all stakeholders. But the reality is it's coming. And it's coming thick and fast down the line. The only thing that I've done is just drag it backwards a little bit and not let it hit everyone as hard as it is at the moment, and possibly allow inflation to ebb and get to a point where there are some manageable positions out there. No one's going to suggest this is easy, but it's coming. It has to be a consideration long term. We've already had some of the big companies, the Revolutions, the Stonegates, all have to consider, what's going on and how they can get that allocated resource. So, the one thing I would say to you is it's not something that I've advocated for. What it is something through the HMRC is something that I've been made aware of, and I've had to manage appropriately to get ourselves to a point that people are well aware. What I don't want, or the last thing I want, is for everyone to get caught out by the taxman who turns around and says, you're not operating this appropriately. This is a £50,000 culpability position, which you've got to share between the security resource company and the frontline operator. So whether we like it or not, it's coming. We do need to consider it moving forward. No one's suggesting it's going to be easy, but I would rather manage it appropriately and it draw out so that we get almost 12 months worth of getting house in order, rather than this come out as a, you know, fire started sort of driver from HMRC in the different appropriate environments to change the industry. The industry at the moment is a challenge. We know that there's lots of cash payments. We know that people are robbing door staff from doors. We know that people are not declaring their tax. We know all of that's happening, and that's not aiding the professionalism of the sector either. When you talk about, you know, guest safety officers, is that what we want to be known for? Or do we want to be known as a professional industry that are doing things the right way? We're, you know, we've got tax parity, we can grow, we can start to talk about CPD, we can start to talk about, you know, professional development within the industry. But the only way that we can start to do that is if we get our house in order. And at the moment, 70% of the industry or businesses out there, between 8 and 10,000 businesses, are operating ad hoc. And when you look at those sort of things, that creates an issue. So that's where the sort of challenge. My wife's just turned up.
just so on another front, I mean, let's look at now. We're still talking about the independents. Now, wouldn't it be cheaper for them to have their own security then, bring them in instead of having an ad hoc company come in, or just?
You say that. I mean, we've already had those challenges that are in place, and what they've said is the insurance is way too high, and there are lots of other implications that they don't really want to get involved with. So. So that's where the sort of challenge lies for us at the moment. So without a doubt, there are other industry people that have had a look, but they definitely can't see it as a cost-effective approach.
What about a hybrid approach?
It could be a hybrid approach, without a doubt. I mean, I've seen them do employed in-house and shorter, but they'll talk about that on the 23rd as well. Yeah. So they'll be very clear that the due diligence, you know, resonates with whoever supplies.
Yeah.
Also, can you see this causing more closures of independent venues?
I think it really depends on how it unfolds and what support is given. I don't think anyone's going to come along in a way that they're just going to want to close things down. What they're going to do is talk appropriately. So tax compliance happens in a way that they start to talk to people and get them to get their house in order. No different than if you've got HSE action points or fire risk assessment action points. There are going to be ways that you're going to be able to move this forward. But like you say, I mean, I haven't got that experience on how they're going to approach. What I do know is it's coming, and we need to be aware of it, and people need to be fully compliant. We're already going to see things like protect duty, you know, have an influence on that as well. So you've got to remember this security element's coming with a cleaning up the house and getting everything sorted and getting people into the right zone. We know full well, you know, with a lot of people out there, the vetting is poor. You know, the scenarios around training, you know, they barely train them apart from sticking them on the front door. And if they're lucky, you know, some of them we get who could communicate. And, you know, that's a bit that we're trying to eradicate, is to actually get a level of quality and compliance that's going to allow the sector to thrive, rather than be known as this backdoor, back alley environment that potentially is cash payment, or, you know, is a quick way to earn some money for your holiday.
How much of this? Yeah, and I'm talking here probably at the bigger companies, C-suite liability. Our C-suite in these large companies, are they aware of this?
Very much.
What their responsibilities will be?
Yeah, some of the questions have been around is what level of due diligence are you expecting? So there is a lot of conversations around the directors asking where they sort of sit. They're doing enough compliance at the moment, but a lot like Stonegate at the moment have gone completely ACS. Revolutions are asking questions. They're going to be here next, you know, in the next couple of weeks, or next Thursday. You know, things like Green King and you know, Mitchell and Butt, they're all on this call. They're all are very well aware. They're on the journey, and we've been speaking to them all this time. What they are now going to hear is in front of the security operators and suppliers and the operators, same call, talking about the same thing. They can't deny, you know, I do one call with security operators and one with operators, and one of them goes, "Oh, it's never going to happen. I didn't hear that. Is that what was said?" And now what we're doing is the complete suite of people can be on the call and they can ask the questions. And, you know, it's really up to them what they do in terms of moving forward. But ultimately, there is going to be a level of culpability that they've got to consider as an industry.
Gary?
Well, nothing, no further question.
The only thing I'm going to pick up on then, just as a final point on this, is we're looking at events when we're looking at the you know, those kind of things, large events, etc., where you get your tent, a bit of food, etc., and you get paid like £9 or whatever it is as you get out there for a week, or you know, part of it is, a lot of it is like part of the fabric of life, isn't it? It's part of growing up for a lot of people, or it's a way to get a cheap concert, etc. What kind of impact is that going to have on those kind of events?
I think the one thing that we're noticing is that either the event itself or the security resource supplier or steward supplier is still a central company. So there is still a resource company that sits at the back end of this. It doesn't tend to happen through Park Life, for instance. What they will do is they'll have an administrative or resource company that works with them, and they will bring those people in at you know, at mass. So yeah. I think the issue is what they're attaching themselves is those people. No one goes out and individually looks for one member of security, or I'm looking for 1,000 people to work at a festival, I'm going to do it individually. It just doesn't happen. They go through a resource company. That's the view that they have. I mean, anyone who goes out and does it individually is working on a very much a smaller scale.
It's just the interesting point in that, because as well, within that, we're talking about liability, culpability, insurance purposes, that all of these people need to be, if you're taking Martin's law and, you know, protect duty, etc., seriously, they're going to have to be qualified. And again, that's an interesting, that starts to shift.
I wouldn't say they have to be. They have to be directed and trained and inducted is probably what I would say.
Or qualified, as we call it in the. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I mean, I think what they do, you know, there is a necessary level of training in terms of induction into a role and what they've got to do, which is fine. Qualification is slightly different. I mean, for me, yeah. I think that's something that's got to be worked with. It's listen, there are a lot of things to iron out. There are a lot of questions out there. Like I said to you, we're trying to get the best of a situation which is going to be challenging for the industry and try and manage it through the best way that we can. There's no two ways about it that there are going to be fallouts from this, but I'd rather be able to manage the fallouts than watch them happen. I suppose is the way that we viewed it, and that's the way that we've had to approach it.
Yeah. Right, Gary.
Just think that the London living wage is going up. I can't remember what it's gone up to now. 1 second. Do you remember what my person has just disappeared? I believe it was going up to £13 something for the London living wage. Is that correct? Anyone?
I don't know offhand, but yeah, possibly. Yeah.
I think
that's the other thing that's going to come into this as well, because as you can appreciate, the go up through the living wage. So something that DWP will be focused on as well when we meet on the 23rd.
Right. I think there was some good. Sorry.
Go on, you crack
on.
No,
the reason I'm saying it, Gary, is because you're talking about a living wage. I think there's a guy called John Lambert who's done some work with the with IPSA, International Professional Security Association. They did some work that sort of built on the Gangmasters Association as well, that sets out what a person should earn minimum wage national minimum wage, yeah, and living wage.
If you think about it, from the national living wage or national sort of you know, the working living wage, as you say. I mean, if you get to a point where you're PAYE, they're going to have to, and there are going to be some that are going to have to put their rates up without a doubt. So I think there are a huge amount of things here that are going to make it have an impact on the sector as a whole. But all of those people, from resource supply to end user, are going to have to consider how that sits in terms of cost.
Just going back to that, is the London living wage that should be £13.15, and the UK living wage should be £12 an hour. So that's quite a big step. I mean, it's, to be honest with you, it's not a big step. I mean, going back when I first started doing this, I was on £15 an hour, and that was 38 years ago. Now we're now, sorry, that was door supervisor. That was all bouncers back in the day, as you know.
Sure.
But now we're looking at, you know, we're now 38 years on, and we're now just getting to £13.15 for the people as a London living wage. I mean, again, we're looking at the smaller retailers or the smaller operators. For them to start paying for security, they're going to be looking at a minimum £25 to £30 an hour now. They've got to start paying out.
That's right. There's no margin in that, is there? That is these wages. That is before you've added in all the additional costs that go on top of it, and then on top of that, when you reach that thing, you've then got to add in the your profit margin. Gary, £15 an hour. You know, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth. Yeah, in today's rate is about £35 an hour. Can you imagine getting that as a, you know, these days?
I think the key thing here is like you say, we need to manage this through, and there is no easy way to break this in apart from to gather time, not only to allow inflation to ebb, but also for us to consider how it's going to impact all of the stakeholders around the table. So that's the way that we've approached this, and I think it's realistic, it's structured, it's considered, but I without a doubt have no doubt that it's going to have a considerable impact long term. It's going to have some positives, but obviously from an economics perspective, it's not ideal.
Gary, last words, and then because we're going to have to close.
My last words is, Michael, you're a true politician, mate. You're a true politician.
Trying to say,
but on a final note, I mean, you know, I am in a funny sort of way welcoming this. I think it will be a good thing in the long term. I think over the next few months, when it starts coming in July, August, I think we'll see how it's going to pan out. I am hoping it's not a problem with the small independent operators, because at the end of the day, they are the backbone of most things, is where things start. So that's what I'm hoping for. And obviously with Mike at the helm of the nighttime industries, hopefully he'll be able to guide these guys and girls out there that they can stay on the float and they can carry on.
One thing that I will say to you is there is going to be a fiscal intervention prior to the election, which we're hoping will be VAT. So that may well cushion some of this moving forward. So, but obviously lots to play for, lots of work still to do. But, you know, we're looking at all of these avenues. We do understand that it's going to impact businesses, but we also understand that we need to get some sort of tax parity in the security industry long term to make it workable and professional. It's a fine line in terms of balance, but, you know, it's something that's coming. We just need to manage it appropriately in a very sort of testing economic period. I am starting to sound like a politician, aren't I?
No, you're not, mate. But it's you know, and I'll finish it off now, because the bottom line is, Mike, what you're doing and taking this approach, and anybody who is listening and taking serious note about this, a managed approach is the best that we can actually hope for. Not managed decline. This is a managed investment into our future. Because if we professionalize it, exactly as Mike says, whilst there may be some short-term pain, there will be long-term gain. And that is the critical thing. We have the opportunity, and which is why I love having Mike on and people like Anish Habib and others in the industry to take the lead. We're supposed to be leaders. We're supposed to know what's right. And if we don't know and don't say it, who else is going to know? So socials from Gary.
Right. If you like our content and you'd like to like and subscribe, please press the button below, click on the link. And if you'd like to follow us on our website, our Instagram page, Ian will put the links down below.
Yeah. And who do we DM?
We DM me because no one speaks to you.
Yeah, that's quite right. And I'm not going to answer anyway. Meanwhile, everybody, it's been fantastic, Mike. Thank you so much. What can I say? Peace out.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, both.